That's one. Good day, ma'ams and sirs, and welcome to another DC versus Marvelous episode of the Number 9 with Tommy podcast. A dramatic and rapid rise in violent crime statistics has shocked us. I'm sincere. A gun toting American will kill you with scattered shots if you're near. The media says you're now 5 times more likely to get a Glock in your ear. Relax, you're forgetting that the world was closed doors and locked in last year. Stop filling your time slots with news that's intended to mislead and confuse, so that your little cable channel can attract ignorant people and views. We totally get it. In 2020, people were locked up and struggling with mental health from inside their houses with their blinds drawn down. And you didn't mention a single time how it appeared that the violent fucking crime's gone down. You reported the outrageous growth of domestic abuse and the horrid impact that a pandemic would have on the masses of youth. But you cast that story aside when a single gunman that fits your narrative spazzes and shoots. What happened to how much we care about the kids that were home getting raped, beaten, and battered? What happened to Floyd, Brianna, and Ahmaud and all the lives that you told us had mattered? Your facade, your whole image, and the bond of trust has been shattered. Now I see your formula. This isn't thoughts that are scattered. This is animal magnetism focused on panic and fear. This is a journalist who hasn't covered a positive story since he began his career. This is an anchor who draws ratings by running scary words across a screen. What are you, Ron fucking Swanson, reading whatever's on the teleprompter because your boss is too mean? Oh, to report fake news. What a tactless dream. An overused tactic and a factless scheme. Here's a headline to run, and I'll give it to each one of you callow hacks to report it. Man wishes he could go back decades, vote pro-choice, and have your asses aborted. Your births have probably cost Americans lives. Your words definitely teach Americans lies. Because of you, Karens call police with hysterical cries. So welcome to the show with two flag-waving American guys. Tommy fucking Washington, what's been up, man? How are you?
I'm good. I like that line about the pro-choice thing. That was pretty good.
Yeah, it didn't take much thought. It just came right away.
I gotta ask you, did you watch that video I sent you about Sweden?
No, because you said you were doing it with...
No, never said I was gonna do it with anybody else.
Oh, I thought, because we weren't going to do the show today, you were going to do a show with two other guests,
Yes, which will be on Wednesday.
which will be Wednesday. I thought that's what you were covering.
No,
Oh,
I'm
well.
not gonna have that discussion with them.
Okay, well then I'll watch it.
Yeah, well now the problem is we won't be able to do that until like the end of fucking July.
I don't know, we could do something Thursday or Friday if we really want to.
Well, Thursday I won't have time because I'm getting ready to leave, and Friday I'm gone.
No, so we'll sneak it in Thursday, no problem.
Pat, do you want to introduce our guest?
I sure do. Our guest, who's dealing with some gnarly ass sunburn from his vacation to Connecticut, is my brother Michael, who you guys all heard on a earlier podcast where we figured out Michael is a nurse and we talked about that a little bit. What else do we talk about, Michael?
COVID-19
Okay.
pandemic.
And that was, man, what?
That was early.
Yeah, that was
probably like
before
October,
Christmas.
November.
Yeah. Okay. So this is his second time live on the show. Second time on the show. First time live in person. Coming from Arizona, Michael. What's the weather like in Arizona compared to here?
Yeah. Hold on. Before we go into how did you get sunburned here and not in Arizona?
Because he's outside, not stuck in a hospital.
Well, there's truth to that. We went fishing, and we, I was out on the boat, and we were just on the far side of the lake, and I was just really having a good time, and I could feel myself getting toasted. But I was like, by the time I paddle back to shore and get sunblock, it's like
Yeah.
the moment's gonna be gone, and I had a lot of stuff I was just reflecting on, and just enjoying the moment. And I was like, I'll just deal with the sunburn. Didn't realize it was gonna get as burnt as I did, but I was like,
It happens quick, man.
yeah,
Imagine if you had no hair.
yeah. Well, I have like no, I'm just like pasty white, so it doesn't
Yeah.
take long.
He is
But I was like,
very
I'll just
red.
deal with the consequences. I'm not gonna ruin the moment,
Yeah.
Okay,
Keep going.
so you're on vacation, but last year during the pandemic, just a little reminder: how much were you working?
At the end of the year, I had worked a total of 340 days in 2020, and I did 15 nights of call every month, and I did numerous 24 plus hour shifts. The
So
longest being 33, I believe.
Oh my god, 33-hour shift?
Yeah.
That's the guy I want taking care of me.
Yeah, right.
Stay the fuck out of my room. How are you holding up at the end of a 33-hour shift? Did you drive home?
Yeah, I drove home.
Okay. Oh god.
But fortunately, at the time, I was living right around the corner. We do have places in the hospital where if I have a long call shift, I go and sleep before I get in the car.
Is that
and go
just
to
where
work.
all the nurses go to fuck?
No. Well, I wouldn't know. At least they don't when I'm there.
Do they
I
talk
typically,
about it?
huh?
Do they talk about it?
Typically, they go there to sleep.
I only ask because I'm somewhat of an expert. I've watched the show Scrubs, which gives me a real insight to your life. And on that show, they have like one sleep room where they all just go to fuck all the time.
Yeah. It's pretty unsanitary in the hospital to have that kind of relationship.
Okay.
A
Yeah,
lot of
right, come on.
microorganisms. Devastating COVID-19 virus been floating around the hospital, and
Okay.
yeah, I'm not sure I'd want to
I
have
just,
relations in a
from
hospital.
my experience, and I'm strictly speaking on my behalf, when girls have sex with me, the last thing they're thinking about is this disease. If they were thinking about that, they wouldn't be sleeping with me.
Yeah, but not all girls have self-esteem issues, Patrick. Others really care about
Oh,
themselves. They want to
okay.
take good care of themselves. So
All right. All right. The last time you were on the show, we discussed a thing called moral injury. Do you find yourself, this is a three-parter, do you find yourself struggling with that now that this has calmed down a little bit, if it's calmed down a little bit? Two, do you think that it will be a bigger deal in the long term? And three, was it a real thing? I mean, we talked about it. It was a new term for the most part. So was it all because of the pandemic? Was it hype? Is it real? Is it acute? Is it chronic? What's going on with moral
I
injury?
think a lot, as with a lot of the things we saw, mental health and other things, the pandemic exacerbated everything. I don't think the moral injuries from the pandemic. I think spotlight was put on it during the pandemic. We lost a lot of nurses last year due to suicide. A lot of the invitations I've been getting to go to seminars and different programs where they have like critical care on this, and they'll have several topics, and one always seems to be on suicide rates
Huh.
in the nursing profession after last year. I know that overdose rates went through the roof, so a lot of people were really coping poorly.
Nurses overdose rates?
Nurses, healthcare
Jesus.
workers as a whole.
That's a terrible
So
problem.
suicide and overdose rates shot through the roof. I don't have the statistics on it, but it'd be interesting to look into. But it's just, yeah, I mean, moral injury. I think what we saw and what I saw working for my own healthcare system is all for profit. Once we privatized the military, prison systems, and healthcare, started seeing a lot of things that we would say is unethical.
Sure.
What we saw in the healthcare systems during the pandemic is for them to be able to keep the doors open. Now, if you're dealing with the not-for-profit or for-profit healthcare, not-for-profit, they were eligible for, we were calling them rapid travelers, so they would get a lot of resources in the form of bodies. They would get nurses, and they would get rapid travelers. They'd be there in 48 hours or less.
That sounds
They're
useful.
getting a lot of money and just supplies that a for-profit healthcare system wasn't necessarily getting because we weren't eligible. So for the for-profits, what they were doing is furloughing staff. We had, I think, cut by 40% of the staff. So anybody who wasn't able to be at the bedside taking care of patients, your job was really, at risk, and they furloughed for months at a time. So, the nurse then became the secretary, the EVS. We did everything. Sometimes you're having to clean your rooms, you're empty your trash, you're having to also take care of all the PCT stuff.
I would be
And
so pissed about that. Like, I worked so hard to not empty my own garbage at that rate. I'd be fucking pissed.
well, it's not so much we're above emptying a garbage can, but when you're already working hours and hours and you have patients dying in front of you and you can't do basic things like oral care or turn them and clean out their bed sores and do on because your time is being filled with emptying trash.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's kind of
it's-
like, where are the resources? Where's the help coming in to help us with this stuff so we can focus on the patient, the human
Mhm.
being at the bed. And don't forget too, because there was such restrictions on visitation, most every family were visiting their family with Zoom calls. Who's holding the Zoom? So now the nurse is expected to stand there with the iPad, and so their family can zoom in, and so that also took a lot of time.
Jesus.
Families calling all the time, and one of the things that we would ask to say, hey, we need one person in the family to be kind of like the
The
liaison.
point of contact.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and but that was a tough one. So we live in a area that culturally, um, the Mexican population. My wife is Mexican, and their family dynamics is very different. Um,
Everybody's involved.
Everybody's involved. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't necessarily get, the matriarch or anybody just calling to get an update and feeding out the family. Everybody wanted to call and everybody wanted the information. So that nurse was just pulled in 1,000 directions, and certainly the doctor wasn't going to sit there on the phone with all his family members. And then it always fell to the nurse to have to do that as well. And then if he didn't answer the phone call or give all the information and spend time on the phone, then you caught a lot of attitude.
Yeah, you're a piece of shit.
Demonized,
You don't
yeah.
care enough. Sure.
So the most trusted profession, at some point last year, also became, for a lot of people, the most hated profession too. And that's, a lot of us felt that way. I had I had a woman come. Her husband was in the ICU, COVID-19 positive. It didn't look good. He was most likely going to die. She wanted to come into the hospital, be allowed at bedside with him. And we said, well, we can't allow that. First of all, she says, well, I'll stand outside of the ICU room. We said, first of all, you're probably positive yourself. You've been
Right.
living with this guy in the house, so we can't just have you inside the hospital hanging out. She says, well, I'll get tested. Well, we don't just test the public. That's not how it works, especially
Right.
if you're not symptomatic, because at this point you could be asymptomatic and still carrying, right?
Right.
So then she says, I said, we don't even have bathrooms in the room.
Mm.
Even if we put you in a negative pressure room with them, you wouldn't be able to leave to use the bathroom. Just I'll just wear diapers the whole time. And when she said that, it was like this, she wasn't even thinking logically or
Right.
rationally. She just was outside of the world of rational thinking. And I get it. It's her
Yeah,
husband,
it sucks.
spouse. You want to be there with them. If they're going to die, you want them to die holding your hand. She had a wound vac on her legs. She had this big hole in her leg. She had an infection, abscess, or something dug out, I'm guessing. But she had an active infection on her leg, and I'm telling her, like, there's
This
so
isn't gonna
many
work
things.
out.
Yeah. And I could, her friends were sitting there and they were videoing me, because that day I was administrative supervisor.
Oh,
So
you were the cop that day.
yeah.
Camera in
Nice.
your face.
So they were filming me, and I said, please stop. And I asked them numerous times to stop, and they weren't. And what they wanted to do was catch me saying the wrong thing and then
Right.
blast me, right? And one of the I separated them. I took the patient's spouse and put her in a different room, and I got like one of the administrators on the phone with her,
Yeah.
trying to talk sense into her. And the friends were just like pointing fingers at me and just kind of belittling me, and they said, you have no idea. Well, at that point, I'd had enough. And I just said, don't tell me I don't know, what she's going through. I said, I've spent 340 days in this hospital. This was just at the end of 2020. And I said, every day, if I do make it home, I go home, I have to lock myself in a bedroom and listen to my 2 kids cry on the other side of the door, banging on the door because all they want to do is hug me. And I can't even touch them because I may kill them myself. I said, don't tell me I don't know what this is doing.
Yeah.
And they stopped.
Yeah.
They got it at that point. They realized, like, we're not the enemy.
Right.
We're in this, and our job is to keep the public safe, is to keep the patient safe,
Right.
and those two don't always work well together, and it's just tough.
Jeez.
All
I
right.
can't imagine.
I think last time we drew the correlation. You made this point at the very beginning of what you were saying. That moral injury between nurses and soldiers was kind of a comparable thing. They were both suffering from moral injury, and we're kind of getting away from the categorizing everything as PTSD and starting to use moral injury. It's interesting that the first thing that you said this time was that there's an increase in suicide rate because we have the 22 a day with the military that we oftentimes talk about on the show. So that's, I guess, another correlation, moral injury. I guess that answers the question. That's real. It's a real thing.
Yeah, it certainly is a real thing, and I think, like I said, I think the pandemic exacerbated it, but when we privatize healthcare in this country, and we have for-profit healthcare machines, we're going to see a lot of things moving forward where we're going to be like, we're saving money for the industry, but that money's taken away from patient care.
Right.
Yeah.
And that right there causes moral injury because we get into this profession because we want to take care of people.
Right.
We want to do what's ethical and what's right, but a lot of things what we're seeing don't really correlate with that.
Yeah, that's a brutal truth.
And then when you have a pandemic come and in order for them to keep the doors open, they really hunker down on expense.
Yeah.
It just exacerbates that feeling.
Yeah.
So you mentioned going home and locking yourself in your room because you can't really be around the kids because what if you contracted that day and you're asymptomatic? How difficult is the balance between, like, you have this double dichotomy, right? You have the husband wife thing at home and the mom dad thing at home. So now you're going home, but she's spent the entire day in what's basically a solo mommy mode. She's a single parent, and you're working way too many hours. So you probably feel like nobody in the world can understand what you're going through. She probably feels like nobody in the world can understand what she's going through because she's raising kids on her own. You're working too much and you don't get to see the kids. She probably wants to work, and maybe spend less time with the kids. How do you make that work?
Well, that's a good question, and I haven't quite figured that part out. For me, this is not just a job. I didn't choose a career because I had a lot of opportunity, not because I could make a lot of money. I left a Catholic seminary to be a nurse. This was a calling for me. I chose this, or profession chose me, I guess, because this was like a ministry. So what I do believe that I'm doing the work of God. That's what really drew me into this thing. Having said that, when you have a wife and when you have children, they then become your most important ministry
Right.
in life. Your wife or your spouse should be number one. Your kids should be number two, and then everything else goes after that. So ironically, we were talking about my sunburn, and I didn't want to, paddle back with the kayaks yesterday. That was one of the things that I was thinking about because recently I had a job opportunity open up in the hospital that I work for.
Oh, we're going to get there.
Full-time administrative supervisor. And I've really been wrestling with, do I make the jump? Because that job, I would be doing 3/12s a week. I have 4 days off every week. There'd be available opportunities for me to pick up bonus shifts so I could generate the same kind of money I'm making now with this job that I'm on call all the time. And that was one of the things that I spent the whole afternoon thinking about is, am I ready to make that leap? One of the things I see a lot of people do in their career field is they get out of a job they love too soon, and then they spend a lot of times wishing they stayed in it.
Talk about the machine that you were just talking about. When we privatize healthcare, we start making financial decisions over decisions about well-being. You're saying the people in the field make those same decisions. I should leave the thing that I'm truly enjoying because there's an opportunity to make more money. So they chase the money.
They call it the golden handcuffs.
That's pretty. Tommy.
Yeah.
Tommy knows all about the golden handcuffs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they don't let you leave. Right now,
I escaped the golden handcuffs. I'm never going back.
Right. We got a lot of chat going on.
Where?
And for some reason, it's not popping up on OBS over here.
Why can't we can't see anything?
It'll be. I got it right here. I don't know why.
She said, "Honey, your mic is very low."
Yeah.
Thank you, sweetheart. I'll adjust it. Oh, that was the Tom.
Mason said, "I understand this is a serious topic, moral injury, but I'm more concerned with oral injury." Pat, what is the name of what is going on with your mouth?
I had a nicotine pouch in, you piece of shit. What are the odds that you would
think he thinks you got a pretty mouth there?
And then Erica said, Mason, that's why he usually has the microphone in front of his face.
God damn it. I'm getting ripped apart.
And Mason said, too, it's been driving me nuts.
He actually said it's been driving me nuts.
All right.
Anyways, I took the nicotine pouch out since that happened.
Thanks, guys.
So we're going to get to that golden handcuff theory in just a second.
All right.
Before we do, Do you? So this is really weird because this, like everything that we just talked about, with you being at work all the time, I can see a wife resenting her husband for not being there. At the same time, I could see the husband resenting his wife for being at home and enjoying the kids. And then you go home. Do you feel obligated, like pressured by yourself, to constantly be the one taking care of the kids, even though your significant other is right there because she's been doing it all day? Despite the fact that you've been slaving at the hospital all day, do you go home and you're just like, all right, I get to work another fucking 12-hour shift right now?
No, actually, it's probably the exact opposite. When I go home, because usually I'm on call, you know, I have a great wife. She's basically like sit on the couch, put your feet up. She has dinner waiting. And she just
Do you know
pampers
where?
me.
Do you know where we can get more of these? Is there-
I have one upstairs, man.
And she doesn't really throw any of that in my face.
Okay.
I do, however, spend a lot of time. I don't have any other hobbies outside of working and family.
Right.
So if I'm not working, even if I'm on call, I'm at home with the family, spending time with
Okay.
them.
So yeah. So at least you're not, out there every night playing, I don't know, flag football or something.
Yeah, I don't do any. I don't really have friends anymore. I don't really have any activities outside of maybe hiking, but I don't get to do that very often either.
Okay.
That's another reason why I'm thinking of a career change.
So-
Not career change, but just a department change.
That brings me to this. I spoke with your wife yesterday when you weren't around, and we talked about this change. So basically, your current job is we'll call it you a team lead.
I'm a clinical lead. So that's a new term for supervisor.
Right.
So I supervise.
So like a department manager.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And the next step forward in your career would be kind of a hospital manager, or at least a wing manager, something like that.
So the way it would work is there's a clinical lead, which is what I am, and then there's a manager, and then there's a director.
Okay.
We don't have a manager because my
Because that would
director and
cost
I
money.
split all those responsibilities. It's we run an LMRS system at the hospital. It's productivity, and this is for profit, right? This is
Right.
part that. So, in order for us to pay for staff that we have working in the cath lab,
Yeah.
somebody works a 10-hour shift, you have to earn 10 FTEs for that person to work that whole shift.
Okay.
We are awarded 21 FTEs per case we do. So if we have in the cath lab and in our special procedure area, which is where we do pre and post, if we have 10 nurses that day, then we have to earn 100 FTEs. So we have to do at least 5 cases in order for everybody to work full time.
Any case or specifically Corona?
No, any case in the cath lab.
Okay. So, but cath lab's not a good place to be. Do you get 5 a day? That's
Not all. Well, that's usually right now we have to do about 6 or 7 cases a day in order to keep everybody working full time.
okay.
So one of the things that we did because we saw productivity drop during COVID-19. They weren't bringing a lot of outpatients in because they aren't going to bring people into the hospital
Right.
with the limited resources. So in order for us to keep people working full time, we had to find ways of reducing our productivity. One thing we did was we said instead of bringing in a manager, because they furloughed our manager at the beginning of the pandemic,
Yeah.
because arguably,
I love this. Get more work
That
done.
job is replaced.
well, they
they're
just
not
spread those
helping.
responsibilities out between me and my director.
Yeah.
We did a really good job with it, and we actually our volume and everything that we've been doing to the department is up so high from in the past. And they're really reluctant to give us another manager because they're like, you guys are doing just fine without one. Why would we give you another manager?
Yeah, we're here for profit.
Yeah, so we didn't bring a manager back after she was furloughed because we were like, we can work people full time, but now we have all this volume coming out of, we're just busting out of seams with volume. We're like,
Right.
we need the manpower now, and they're like, we don't want to give it to you because you guys are doing just fine without it. So I'm basically a clinical lead, interim manager. So I'm doing both roles,
If you took whatever the next position would be, what would it be?
manager.
And then who would take your spot?
They would raise up whoever
Okay.
would be next. Yeah.
So, and as a manager, that's the 312s.
No, manager would be 5 days a week. Now, if I move out of the cath lab altogether and go work as an administrative
Okay.
supervisor, their role is they're over the whole hospital. So
This
they're
is the
basically,
path that your wife and I spoke about.
yeah. Now they're basically their major responsibility is staffing the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
They're putting out fires in every corner of the hospital. And they respond to all the emergencies, whether it's a level 1 trauma, whether it's a STEMI in the cath lab, whether it's a stroke going to IR, whether it's a code blue up in PCU. They respond to all emergencies, and they are there to support the staff.
Okay.
So if you have this code blue in a unit where they're not used to running a code blue, you need to get there quick because you're the one who's going to basically
Okay.
be running the code blue.
But not supervising it?
Supervising, or you have
Or
an active
actually
role
doing
in it.
it,
Yeah, if
yeah.
the nurses are kind of like,
We've never done this.
Yeah,
I'm
they-
shitting
you
my
gotta show
pants.
them.
yeah, or,
Okay.
you know, it's not uncommon that, you know, that I do administrative supervisor on the side. It's not uncommon that we're a level 1 trauma center. So we have a huge pile up accident, and then all of a sudden you have 4 or 5 traumas hit the ER at one time.
Right.
You know, I go in and nurse those, you know, have an active role in the trauma. That's how you support. Even in cath lab, when I hear numerous traumas being called overhead, if I'm not in ratio, I walk over and I jump in and help the ER out because they usually get
Okay.
overwhelmed and they're inundated with all these traumas coming in. So as administrative supervisor, you may go from, you know, moving staff around to make sure the patients are covered in the hospital, to taking a phone call from an upset family member, to our job is also to make sure that the paperwork is legally finished for bodies,
Yeah.
you know, patients that have expired, and then we release them to the morgues.
Is that the official term? Patients that have expired?
Expired, yeah, that's
It seems
decedent.
That seems decedent.
Yeah,
Nice.
decedent, yeah.
So
So
it
we
seems worse
release,
than dead. Expired seems very aggressive.
we release to the mortuaries. We make sure the paperwork's all legal. And then if there's an emergency happens, then you may be doing chest compressions the next minute. It just depends on what's happening in the hospital. You're to meet the needs of the hospital, and you're the go-to person for everybody. If administration has a problem, they call you. If a nurse or a PCT or a doctor has a problem, they call you. If a family member has a problem, they call you. So you also carry around a phone. You carry around
That
a
sounds awesome.
Vocera with the earphone in. Yeah, it's a high volume of calls all day, and that's
So
really
you're moved all
Yeah,
day.
you're the emotional dumpster of most everybody.
Yeah.
You have to be able to make decisions very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be very flexible, and you have to be able to adapt just about any situation. So, not a lot of people can do it, and not a lot of people enjoy doing it. But you know, I actually like doing it quite a bit. I like multitasking. I like 100 miles an hour when I hit the hospital. It's like fast.
I function the same way. I
Yeah,
prefer fast paced.
just want it going
You know what
quickly.
it seems like? It seems like something that's in my position for my. You know what I mean?
What's that?
That position that he's talking.
Well, management is management. Whether you're managing a Burger King, a wing at a hospital, you know,
Yeah,
it
it's
doesn't
just-
fucking matter. If
it's
you're
just
managing,
nonstop.
it's the exact same job. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. My job now is clinical lead, and one of the things that I struggle with is my job never ends right now. So if there's this case on the weekend, I'm not on call. Let's say it's a weekend, I'm off,
Yeah.
and something bad happens.
You-
I'm getting phone calls from the staff and from the doctor, whether they're complaining or saying, "How do we do this?" or "What do we do that?"
And if you went to this 3 12-hour shifts,
I
would
clock
that
out.
continue?
No, I clock out. I'm done.
This is so.
Then there's no call. So when I go home at night, I'm not going to be called back in. My weekend's off. It's my weekend's off. If somebody wants to talk about their feelings or emotions, it's not me they got to talk to. I don't have to pretend like I care. So
I feel that.
yeah, it's just tough because there's a lot of like drama in that.
Well, and people
So,
people handle things at different levels, right? Like some people are affected by something that it would just roll off your shoulder, and to them it's the end of the world because they've never seen anything like it or they've never gone through anything like it. So that now they're crying to you, and you're like, mother.
Well,
father."
no, if it's related to like a traumatic experience, then I'm more than happy to take that phone call and talk to somebody through it. I'm more talking about like, you know, I can tell you, we had one nurse that used to work for us, and every case she got called in for on the weekend. I get a 30-minute phone call about how she didn't feel it was very emergent and that she shouldn't have been called in for it. And I'd be like, you have a job where you take call. Your job is to
Yeah.
respond to call cases, even if they're emergent or not. You know,
Right.
sometimes we don't go in and do a case because it's emergent. Sometimes the only reason why we're keeping this patient in the hospital is because we need to eliminate a life-threatening coronary artery block. So we're
Okay.
going to do a cath on this patient on a Saturday morning. If it's clean, we'll discharge him that day rather than keeping him in the hospital till Monday,
Right.
where they're going to have an increased risk of medication errors, fall risk, nosocomial infections, not to mention the expense of sitting in a hospital for days when it's not necessary.
Yeah.
So sometimes you just do it because that's what's best for the patient. But she would be
Makes
so
sense.
offended over it, and she would call me sometimes 9 or 10 at night just to complain. And I'd be like, this is the job.
Yeah,
if
this
if
is
it
what
makes you
you
so
signed up for.
unhappy, yeah, quit. Nobody needs you here. Those are kind of phone calls that I wouldn't be getting anymore.
That sounds dreadful.
So it seems like, in my opinion, that this other position would be better.
Not just better for you, better for your family. So this is what I'm guessing, though. It's not better for the hospital, in your opinion.
Well, no, this the thing. I'll be a top performer whichever route I go, and I'll be,
So
do a
your
good
team will
job either way.
suffer, but another team will benefit.
Yeah, I mean,
What stops you from taking this? What's stopping you from taking the 3 12-hour shifts?
because some of the stuff we see in the cath lab, I mean, we had a 23-year-old female patient a while back. She was found down with a 6-month-old baby in her arms. She was in cardiomyopathy related to the pregnancy. So it was like she was found down by her neighbors. She was rushed in. Her husband was deployed over in Kuwait. We came crashing in at 2 a.m. We put a ventricular assisted device in her heart. This was somebody who we tried to send out to another larger facility, and they refused her because they were like, she's dead. You guys are wasting your time on her.
Yeah.
We we were all hands on deck for several hours. We worked on her heart. We got this device in her. She walked out of her hospital, made a 100% full recovery.
Everything about this makes me feel like you should still take the 312s.
We
That sounds awful, bro.
my very first Father's Day.
No, but that's, to him, that's reward. Like, that's an amazing thing that he did. He saved somebody's fucking life.
Yeah.
When somebody
Super
else was
cool.
saying, they're dead. Don't even worry about it. Move on to the next.
Yeah, and so sometimes, the very first Father's Day I ever had,
Yeah.
as I'm sitting down in the church, my pager goes off. I have to leave, respond to a STEMI, and it was a father of 3. We saved his life. And so, I lost that day with my family, but I also gave him many more with his. So sometimes the unknown, where they say the devil you know is worse than the devil you don't know. One of the things that's able to give me life and help me keep going is that I know the job I'm doing. It does feed me. It's rewarding. The sacrifices I make aren't just, they're not selfish. So perhaps this other role I'm in, is that going to lead to a place of burnout because I'm not going to be feeling that same level of reward, or it's not going to help make me feel like I'm making the impact that I am in this role I am now. And then do I suffer because I'm not getting fed that? Sometimes people who are in a job that's not suited for them, it comes out in all areas of their life.
Right.
You know what I mean? Doesn't matter how much money you're making. If that job does not speak to your soul, it's gonna damage some other areas of your life. And so that's my concern. I have a guy in the highly respect him. He was a shot caller in the ICU. He was a charge nurse, and he went to NP school. Everybody's going to NP school these days. And he finished up, and he was leaving. I see him every so often. And I asked him. I said, "Do you regret leaving ICU?" And he goes, "Almost every day." He goes, "Because what I'm doing now is just kind of walking around and seeing
Shaking
patients,
hands,
and
kissing
it's-
babies.
But it seems like that this position that you'd be going for, because you would be running around helping in all other departments, that you would still find that sense of fulfillment, I guess.
Not only that, because you'd be kind of overseeing and staffing the whole place, couldn't you take a fairly, and I think anybody would, that's your baby, right? The cath lab is yours.
Mhm.
No matter where you go, it's always going to be your baby. So you leave, but you staff it appropriately. You hire people to take your place. Don't you feel like you could drop in on them and be like, "Hey, what did we accomplish today?" Like, I need to know what we accomplished today because I wasn't here, and I need that sense of accomplishment.
And I don't really want that headache.
yeah,
No, it's the other issue is every day the hospital is issuing these crazy bonuses because we don't have the staff in the hospital. So it's
like a
administrative
daily
supervisor.
bonus.
Yeah, every day.
What?
So you could pick up. I mean, they're basically $500 a shift to pick up.
Do they have these for janitors by chance?
I'm not sure what their bonus system is, but I'm sure
I'd like you to look into that for me. Arizona's beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm not opposed.
They're
Arizona's not beneath me.
they're also understaffed, so they do have bonus systems in all these areas. But as administrative supervisor,
Those
you're also
garbages.
not being given the resources you need to be as successful as you could be
Right.
because you're dealing with a for-profit healthcare system who is trying to pinch pennies any which way they can. So what we're seeing is all the departments are under the same strain the cath lab is. They're understaffed, overworked. And as administrative supervisor, you are the first line of emotional dumpster. So
Okay.
they're all calling you with complaints about that, and you have to spend the whole day apologizing because you can't send any nurses. You don't have any. So it's not
That
yeah,
sounds a little overwhelming.
well, it can be. Yeah. So when I work it as a shift, I basically take nothing personal. Everybody gets a pass.
Yeah.
So I've always kind of kept the attitude: if you want to talk about my mom, pull me to the side, use some profanity, talk about her, whatever you got. Just don't do it in front of other people.
Sure.
You get a pass every time. So I don't know. It's just I just want to make sure when I make the move, it's a big career. It's a big change. That it's the timing's right.
Okay.
Erica wants to know. So being in the role of the people having to call you and check with patients, etc., will you be able to shut that off, thinking about work after your 3 12-hour days?
So it's a probably not. I mean, with the difference in cath lab, my phone's always on. With the administrative supervisor, I get to turn it off. But we had an incident not too long ago. I was administrative supervisor, and we had a young, I think he was about 25 years old, young patient who had recently gone through. His girlfriend left him, took the kids, and he uh, tried to commit suicide
hmm
and he just had a mental breakdown. It was such a sad thing because I myself would probably be in the same boat.
Yeah, sure.
I really was able to relate to this guy. But he became belligerent and started to threaten staff and
At work.
at work.
Oh, okay.
And at one point he had his fist up in the air, and everybody's really nervous, and he was just kind of like telling everybody, "I dare you to come in here. I'm going to hurt you." And
Ugh.
I think 70% of all workplace violence happens in hospitals these days. We have so much mental health
Yeah.
issues going on. And at that point, I knew just being as a male, I really wanted to stay out of the room because I would just kind of walking
Yeah.
in there, he would just feel challenged.
Yeah.
And
He needs to come
defensive.
down off that ledge himself.
But when he started to like blatantly threaten staff, that's when at that point, I had to go in there and we were going to have to put him down in their restraints and stuff. So I had some security with me and we went in and it took 6 of us. And when you're in an acute mental health break like that, you're superhuman strength
Yeah.
and you care nothing.
Yeah. It's
I
like
mean,
being a meth head.
yeah, this guy's already lost everything in his life. He's got nothing to lose.
Yeah.
We have everything to lose. And it took 6 of us to get him down. And it was just heartbreaking because, again, if we had the right resources, we probably could have prevented this.
Mm.
This guy, and I told him as soon as I walked in, I said, you got choices. You can sit down in bed quietly. We're gonna walk away.
Right.
So if you don't sit down, you don't put your fist down. We're gonna tie you down to the bed. And I said, whichever path you want, it's your choice. You're choosing this. And I tried talking him down. They had already spent 30 minutes trying to talk him down.
Mm.
It was very obvious that he wanted to wrestle. And
If he was suicidal, you think there was a chance that he was hoping one of you accidentally killed him?
no, I don't think that. But I told him, I told him when I walked in, I said, I'm going to just tell you right now, assault on a healthcare employee right now is felony. You will be charged with felony if you hit one of us.
Right.
I said, so don't swing on us. And he never did. He never
Yeah.
wanted to throw him. All he wanted to do was wrestle.
Right.
He just was angry, and that was the way he was letting it out. And when I think back on that, I'm like, I sat that night, actually a couple nights, thinking I really wish I handled that situation differently. But I had so much going on in the hospital that time, I couldn't sit there for 2 hours talking to the guy.
Right.
You know what I mean? We had to make changes. And then I also think about, I've just heard so many stories about people didn't respect mental health issues in the hospital, and they grab a nurse by the neck, and next you got a nurse, that's
Yeah.
hurt.
Sure.
So you get all these things going through your mind. So I think that will cause me some sleepless nights. Could I've done things differently, and hopefully I can make changes, move forward, and do it differently next time.
How do you, like, you must think about all the time, like, all these people that you help, like, how they end up. Like, it's like watching a movie, right? And you watch the ending, and like, I think of this all the time when I watch a movie. I wonder what happened after the movie.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Are you getting cookies for Christmas? What happens?
Actually, a lot of patients do come by. We've had them come in and meet the staff and hug everybody and thank everybody, or
That's
send
cool.
cards, cakes, cookies, things like that.
Do you eat those things?
Yeah, man. That's why I got 15 unwanted pounds. Obviously more before the pandemic.
Yeah.
So we do get to see some of the after stories.
Erica said she understands where you're coming from. She said, adrenaline is pumping when people get into their own minds. They aren't thinking clearly and have superhuman strength. That's the same with individuals with disabilities. That's what Erica, who you just met, does for a living. She takes care of people with
Yeah,
special
she's a
needs.
PCBA.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's got a bunch of letters like you.
Yeah. So you always think like there's 1,000 different ways to handle something. And it's
Yeah.
you're not always gonna do the right thing.
No.
You just kind of hope that you just grow from every experience.
All right, before we jump into Corona, because that's where we're headed, that's where we're going long form, which is probably going to be another half hour or so. We have a blast from the last cast because Don wants everything on the show to be in fucking segments. That was technically Michael's introduction, Dip Dizzy Whistle.
Yeah, 42 minutes of it.
So the blast from the last cast. On the last podcast, Tom, you and I spoke about busing kids
Hold
in.
on, I have a question for Michael before we go much further.
Go ahead.
Do you listen to the podcast, or are you just like being a guest?
I haven't had a chance to listen to very much because I'm always working.
Yeah, I
That's
hear
the
you.
problem.
Could you not? Do you have a PA system at work, or maybe you could play it so everybody in the hospital?
Yeah,
could hear it?
just give us a shout out. And,
yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe
Seems-
those little things in your ear. You could play it, and then in between,
Pretend like I'm listening to the staff.
Yeah.
Well, no, but play it for everybody. You know what I mean? Who's on the
Everybody can
headset?
enjoy it. It's not a bad idea. Maybe it'd make everybody chill out.
play it in the psych ward. They'll
No, I
love
don't
it.
think so. We get pretty amped up over here.
On the last episode, we talked about possibly busing kids. Like the specific example that I gave was Waterbury to Thomaston. Busing kids from inner cities to help alleviate the need for critical race theory in schools, and to give everyone just an equal opportunity at an education. And after we talked about that would all be because of what happened post segregation in Detroit. You remember this conversation?
Yeah.
So, Michael, to catch you up, when segregation was legally brought to an end by Brown versus the board,
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that we saw was in Detroit, where the black to white human ratio was there were more white people, and in schools there were more black kids in Detroit in the downtown city areas. Brown versus board happens, and that balance becomes what it was like 84-61 originally.
Yeah, it was pretty close.
Yeah, there were more black, but not by much. So desegregation happens, and we saw a ton of rich white people move out of Detroit and go, well, mix all you want. My kids won't be involved in that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not taking part in this. So the schools in Detroit now, 91-4, 91 black kids to 4 white kids in Detroit right now. So they're saying, it's a racist system and this is systematic racism. But my point was, well, not really, because the system didn't make white people move. White people were racist and hateful, and they said, we're not going to take part in this. And they moved to small towns, like we see all over America. There's little teeny tiny white towns with 7,000 people, and they don't mix. So one of the ideas that I had was that maybe we could mix kids by using buses, like from Waterbury to Thomas's, short bus ride, everybody gets the same opportunity. I told that to Michael, and Michael had an interesting counterpoint that I do not remember. I was very young. Michael, talk to us.
Well, I've been in this situation in Virginia Beach. Dad had worked to move us out of the Plaza School District
Mm-hmm.
because the gangs were so bad. They
The,
moved us.
the high school that Michael would have gone to was literally referred to as Gang Run. It was really called Green Run.
Yeah, and being a scrawny white guy would have really been preyed upon in that school district.
Sure.
So, because we talk about racism, we always think it's whites are always racist. We never talk about reverse racism.
No,
right?
and it's out there.
Yeah, it's out there big time. So, Dad worked really hard. He moved us into this other school district, and then maybe a year later, they integrated schools. So a lot of these students who I was going to school with, they were integrated and brought over to the new high school.
The
I
new
was at.
safe school.
Yeah, and it didn't just bring gangs of color over. There was also white gangs that came over with it because in I don't know if you remember, in Magic Hollow we had certain gangs that would form up just for whites
Yes.
to combat the black gangs and the brown gangs, stuff like
Yeah.
that. So all these people that Dad didn't want me hanging out with, I'm going back to school with them. And the high school took a really bad turn. I remember they had this is back before the knockout game was cool. They had the knockout game at the school buses after school every day, where you could see the kids line up, and they would just run out in between the buses, and they would just knock out any of the white kids that you saw trying to get on the buses. We at one point we couldn't. They closed down all but 2 bathrooms because if you walk into a bathroom, there was at times a group of guys waiting for any white kid to walk in, and they would just jump us. So there was only 2 bathrooms that you could use, and they had cops on it standing on the outside. So what happened was, so all these gangs started coming to this new school system, which became a new like an avenue for drug sales. So a place that wasn't riddled with drug problems now was,
Right.
and it also became a recruitment for the Crips and the Bloods and the Flock and all those other
Yeah,
gangs.
if you don't like being mistreated, you should join us.
Yeah, so we basically took one problem and made it this school's problem too. Where I don't think that's necessarily the solution, being on the receiving end of that. I think it's just like in healthcare. If our ICU has a lot of patients, we don't say we're going to take these ICU patients out of here and move them down to this other unit where the nurses aren't trained to care for
Right.
ICU patients.
Right.
Teachers are the same thing. Not all teachers are trained to take care of 5th graders. Not all teachers are trained to take care of high schoolers or students with disabilities. I think an inner city student who is coming from gangland, abusive childhoods, those teachers have a different training than a rural student who needs to go home and feed their pig after school. And to take these students who have a very dynamic or a very different upbringing takes a certain level of training. So I think the solution would be we just need to focus resources in these schools
Sure.
that are under-resourced. We need to provide them with specifically trained teachers and enough of them that the classrooms aren't overcrowded. And I think that is a better solution than just trying to mix all the schools.
Do you think maybe some tax money should be reallocated to the schools that are underfunded, and we should get them not necessarily better schools, but everything that goes in that the teachers, the books, the technology?
Absolutely, yeah.
So you take Torrington, for example, right?
Mhm.
You lived here years ago. You get it. First off, I want to say this. Mason said it's not reverse racism, black people just being racist against white people. So racism. You get it, Mason. You understand what we were saying. Fuck you.
That's one. I saw that coming.
Yeah.
Erica said, plus you want people to have a sense of community and pride in community. They won't have that if they are bused to a different community. Valid point.
Yeah, very valid point.
So the town of Torrington just voted in a new high school. They're going to build a new high school. It's going to cost like $160 million. The Torrington taxpayers, our taxes are going to go up because of it, like 5 points. And I've been saying this for years. So Erica, she started with a new company a few years ago. her first year she worked for the town of Torrington, with this company that she was with. They outplace over 100 students per year for learning disabilities, behavior issues, all kinds of stuff. And we pay for that. It's $100,000 on average per kid to pay for that. So we're spending $10 million a year on that instead of investing $5 or $6 million into the proper tools to help those kids.
Here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So instead, we're going to build a new school, a new state of the art school for $160 million. We're going to pay for it, but we're not going to put those things in place.
Yeah,
on
we're going
top
to
of
keep
it.
shipping kids out.
Yeah, we're going to keep doing the same thing we're doing.
Yeah, you're busing people. You're having to feed. I mean, there's very expensive when you start busing people out of and down the road.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that money should be used differently
Yeah.
and focus your resources right there where the problem is, and let's identify, come up with an action plan. Let's fix that problem.
Yeah,
right there.
when Erica told me that, like, I went on a rampage about, like, I was going to start going to board meetings and stuff. And at the time, my son was living here, so I'm not involved in the school system.
He was very
Yeah.
upset about this.
To the point where, like, I'm going to run for mayor or something, because that, like, $10 million is a lot of money to be spending on busing kids out of here instead of just getting if they hired 10 of Erica's to help with these kids, that's going to solve your issue.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
and that's going to be less than $10 million.
That's
At least
fair.
I hope, because she doesn't make $1 million a year.
She's the lowest paid one. The rest
Yeah.
of them make over $1 million to make up for it.
I think there's a lot to be said. Invest in your own household.
Yeah.
Invest in your own household, and that and that certain pride comes with that. And people are going to take that more seriously. Sometimes when we're trying to solve problems, we just create new, more challenging problems.
Yeah.
And they're not necessarily
I'm
solutions.
telling you, man, the answer is watch that video that I sent you.
We'll watch.
All the
we'll watch
answers
the
are in
video.
there. It's
It's
an
only an
hour-long
hour.
video. It's a documentary.
It's about the way Sweden does everything.
Yes, it's the rise, the almost fall, and the rise back up of Sweden.
Okay.
And the way that they do it. And it makes a lot of sense. I think here in America, we could do a lot of it. But the problem, like you were saying about the healthcare system, when things are for profit and there isn't somebody monitoring that, you're taking away at some point. So
yeah, we have our major competition in the city of Tucson. The cardiologists that I work with, they're all employed by the hospital. So they're salaried in the sense that no matter what procedures they do on you, whether you're insured or not, they're getting paid by the hospital. Now, the hospital may not get paid, but the cardiologist
Right.
is going to get paid regardless. So they always do everything.
Yeah.
We do diagnostic testing, we fix, we go back and re-diagnostic, make sure we fix the right thing and it's done right. There's a competition in the city. Their business model is very similar to the for-profit in the sense that they eat what they kill. And we used to work with these cardiologists come to our hospital. They no longer are able to work in our hospital because, Tenet has just said we're not going to be dealing with outside private physicians. We're going to disinvest in our own.
Yeah.
So anyways, these doctors, when we used to work with them, used to skip a lot of steps because for them, it wasn't about quality, it was about quantity.
Right.
They needed to see more patients and do less to them because they would make more money in order to stay afloat. And, it just never seemed to really work out well. They have centers in the city where they have outpatient cath labs where you don't have to take call at. And a lot of people are like, well, I want to go work for them. Me personally, I can't because I know the steps they skip.
Right.
I know enough to know
And
that
you're
like,
not about that.
I can't do it. That's because I can't bring myself to do it, no matter how good it sounds. So yeah, when I think about this business model, I think that is the difference between socialized medicine and capitalized medicine, because you have one group who's going to be guaranteed a paycheck regardless of what to do to the patient, and one group that they have to earn only through the insured patient.
Yeah.
So your care that you're going to receive by one group depends on how good your insurance is. Where with the other group, they have a guaranteed paycheck. They're going to give you the top quality care regardless of who you are, where you're coming from, what insurance you have.
Exactly.
And so when I think about that, and everybody always talks negatively about socialized medicine, and I'm like, when you see it firsthand, if it's done right and done well,
Right.
it's really
Well,
in
and
the
that's
direction that we should be talking more about it.
exactly. But they do it with medicine, and all their hospitals are for profit, but the government pays for it. You get what I mean? So the government's monitoring it. There are certain regulations that they have to follow.
I think
Sure.
that's a
But
great
and
way to keep the costs like insulin down, because if if insulin's $800, the government's gonna be like, no,
yeah,
that's
no,
insanity. We're not paying that bill. Fix that.
yeah. But another thing that they do it with the school system. Everybody gets
A voucher.
a voucher, and they get to choose what school they go to. So certain school, and all the schools are for profit. Certain schools um specialize in one thing or another. So when you get into high school, you can go visit these schools, and everybody gets put on a waiting list, and it's first come first serve. It has nothing to do with how much money your family has or anything like that. It's whatever part you are on the list. That's when you get offered your spot. It seems like the fairest way to do it,
Yeah.
the best way to do it, and it's the equal way to do it. That everybody gets the same opportunity. It's what you do with your opportunity that determines your outcome.
Sure.
You know, so I love it. Like, I'm really thinking about moving to Sweden.
I can
Like,
see you as a Swede.
It seems like the best. And now, given they pay a little bit higher in taxes, you know what I mean? Like, they're paying like 25% in taxes, but
Well, I
Where
think
is
at the
it?
end of the day, we come close to paying that too, because
Yeah, the
you're
government-
taxed 3 times before you spend $1.
Between
You know?
between tax and insurance, I make about 55% of my gross
Yeah.
every week, week in, week out.
it's so
And then at the end of the year, I get like a $300 check from the government. And they're like, "Sorry about overtaxing you."
it's crazy, man. It was really a great. You know who sent it to me? Your buddy Fuckface sent it over to me.
Nice. What's up,
Um,
fuckface?
He won't listen to the show anymore because he called it Fuckface.
Fuck him. Right in his face.
But he sent it to me, man, and I really there was another one I watched too that I told you about. Equal or Free,
Yeah.
I think it was called. And it's about it actually focuses a lot on China
Yeah.
and how China has grown to where they are, and it's because of the free market economy and all that stuff, and the things that we have done wrong that don't allow us to be competitive with China,
Right.
and that everybody wants the same end result and aren't happy with the same starting position.
Yeah, because we
Yeah.
believe that equality means we all end in the same place, not start at the same place.
Yes, which that's not what equality is.
Right. All right.
Yeah.
So we're going to take a pause from this type of talk for Dip Dizzy Whistles segmented show. We're going to play the vocab game with a Torrington Twister. That's your hint on what kind of vocab game it is.
Twister.
No,
You know the Torrington Twisters don't exist anymore.
but they did. And
Yeah,
that
it's
was,
a long time ago. Back
I
when
wanted
you
to
two were
say
kids.
it's the vocab game with a twist.
You get it because you guys are old.
Yeah, I get it.
All right, cool.
This vocab game will not be vocabulary words. It will be real life sports teams. I'm going to give you 3 sports teams. You have to choose which one is not a real team.
Okay,
Super excited.
I'm down for it. What are
Oh.
you waiting for?
I don't know. I didn't know.
There's
if
no
we had-
intro music.
Oh,
or anything.
okay. Here we go.
My son's grandfather just texted me, so he wants to. That's not gonna happen right now. Guaranteed, he wants my son to stay up there longer, and that's not gonna happen.
I always like to make sure Tom hasn't added like a mirror or anything so you can see.
You know what's funny is I went into Google Docs today looking for that because I saw it was on the timeline, and you just put it in your notes.
What a piece of shit. All right, Tom.
This man, I've taken staples, mouse traps, all kinds of stuff because of this. Oh, you know what you should have brought? The mace.
That's true.
We have a nurse here. I'd be fine.
Yeah.
Tom and Michael, you're both playing, I guess. I'm going to give you 3 team names. I will give you the full team name and the place that they are from.
Let's go.
Team 1, the Mars area fighting planets of Pennsylvania.
I also want to know what sports these are.
I don't have that information, I'm sorry. Especially since one of them is made up. The Mars area fighting planets. Team name number 2,
But you do understand that the sport would be important to the team
Yeah.
name, right?
Well, especially because he can barely read. We don't even know where he's getting this information from. Doesn't provide what sport they played. It's kind of like,
The Fighting Planets. What fucking does it matter what sport that's from?
Well, if it's a basketball team, it makes sense. Space Jam makes sense. But if it's a soccer
Jesus.
team, not so much.
Anyways, the Braxton Midnight Maniacs from Utah. Braxton Midnight Maniacs from Utah. And the Beaver Dusters from Oklahoma. The Beaver Dusters from Oklahoma. So, is it the Mars Area Fighting Planets of Pennsylvania, the Braxton Midnight Maniacs of Utah, or the Beaver Dusters of Oklahoma? Which one of those teams is not real?
So Beaver Dusters is so outlandish, it has to be real. Because there's
I
no
feel like
way.
it's too obvious too to be.
That's what I'm saying. It's too obvious for it to be fake.
This Tom will do this. He'll talk himself through it, and then get all worked up and start fighting his own logic.
I'm gonna say the second team
That's what I was
to
leaning towards.
Utah.
The Braxton Midnight
Midnight
Maniacs.
Yeah.
Are we both on board?
I mean,
with
that
this?
seems like a real team name, though. You know what I mean? The other two, not so much. That one seems like it would be a real one. I'm gonna go with two.
You're locked in at two.
Locked in.
You're locked in at two.
I'm locked in.
The Braxton Midnight Maniacs is not a real team. I made
Oh,
that
look
up.
at The Beaver Dusters.
For the record, I don't know if Braxton's a real place in Utah. I just wrote Braxton. Beaver Dusters, though, that's a real team.
See, knowing that team name, that didn't make you want to go figure out what sport they're playing? Beaver
No.
Dusters?
What the hell do
Yeah.
I care? If
Sounds
I'm guessing,
like
it's softball.
Field hockey.
If I'm guessing, it's a transgender team playing softball.
It's a good team name, either way.
All right.
All right.
Moving on to
Dip
this is
Dizzy
our
Whistle,
last-
that was for you.
this
This
is our last
this is
segment.
it. This is the Corona talk. Let's see. Michael, some quick fire questions. The scene at the hospital now, opposing to last year. Because not that the pandemic's over, but it's significantly different a year later.
Mm-hmm.
Are you guys still just asses and elbows in the fire?
No, I mean the numbers of COVID patients are almost nothing. But what we're dealing with now is we've lost a lot of nurses and respiratory therapists from the profession. Every department, every unit is understaffed. There are nursing positions open in every single hospital and department in the city. There's no nurses.
Okay.
Everybody's either quit.
So there's way less work to do and just as much work to do per person.
No, there's no less work. So you have to understand, for an entire year, doctors put off a lot of the outpatient procedures and procedural areas.
Okay.
So we have just a tsunami of cases coming in right now.
That should have been done a year ago.
Yeah, that we're getting caught up. It's going to take us forever to get caught up.
Right.
And we're staffed.
Yeah, it's going to take you 3 years to get caught up a year
Yeah.
worth of work because you still have to do
You're still having to do it.
the work that needs to get done now as well.
Will
You're
this
doing that
be-
plus to getting caught up?
Will this be financially the best time for nurses in American history?
I mean, it was financially the best time for me last year.
Oh, I know.
You know, thankfully I didn't get sick and I didn't miss work. And in fact, actually, that was my strategy of keeping my family safe, was just to stay at work.
Right.
I was meeting a need in the hospital, and
Nurses are hourly for the most part?
yeah, that's one of the reasons why I won't go manager at Catholic. They want me to go salary. And I just
Yeah, fuck that.
I
No,
no, salary. I'd
absolutely
take
fuck
a
that.
huge pay cut.
No.
And that's why I won't do nurse practitioner either. It's like I'd have to take a pay cut to do nurse practitioner.
Salary,
So-
we've talked about this on the show. I was taught that salary is a negotiated price for your smile. You pick the number, but they own the smile. So as soon as you go salary, you got to pick a number that's worth being fucking miserable.
and
Don't go salary.
And what the new model these days is, there used to be like you'd be a manager over this unit. Now you're a manager over a department or a floor.
Right.
So you're taking on droves more and getting paid the same.
Yeah.
Not for me.
Michael, were you ever pressured to misrepresent numbers to get additional funding or to fit a political agenda? Were you ever told to say that somebody died because of corona that didn't die because of corona?
You know, and it's actually a very silly thing. One of the things I think that the media did and what we did as healthcare workers is we underplayed how serious things were and how bad things were.
Okay.
I understand there were a few days where I was off from work and I was sitting at home and the house was quiet. I was watching TV. I'd look outside. It was sunny. And I had no idea. It's easy to sit there and say what's going on down the street in the hospital. It's like you have no concept,
Right.
absolutely no concept of it. So it's very easy to sit at home and watch the news and be like, they're overplaying this,
Right.
or they're making these numbers up. But when you're in the hospital, and the roles that I was in, I was constantly just exposed to it. And there was a time where we had so many dead bodies down in our morgue that were piling out of our cooler system. I was having to like climb over stretchers to get to the other side of the room. No, I mean this was devastating, and I don't think the numbers were exacerbated or exaggerated. I think in a lot of ways we underplayed this, and then I think there's a lot of people who died of COVID-19 that we don't know about because they stayed home and they died in their beds, or this thing was with us for months prior to it actually becoming public. And
Okay.
we have a lot of people who died from this because we didn't know about it yet.
Yeah, they thought it was a flu or something.
Thought it was a bad flu or something. And I mean, I think the numbers are actually less than what they probably should be.
Okay. Michael, do you still run into people who say that COVID-19 is a myth?
Yep. Yeah.
I fucking knew it.
Yeah. And I just don't engage. It's hard. You know what the thing too, and I run the nurses a lot of times who think, that this was exaggerated and exploited and stuff like that. But typically those nurses weren't working in COVID cohorts.
Right.
They weren't in there day in and day out. They may have been in the hospital, but down in a unit that wasn't taking COVID patients, and they weren't seeing the devastating effects of this. And so they kind of live in a state of denial. And, we also have to understand, too, the perfect storm happened. For 4 years, we heard the term fake news.
Right.
Fake news, fake news, fake news, fake news.
Then
fake
corona
news.
hit.
Then corona hit. And everybody's like, oh, it's fake news. You know what I mean?
Fair.
I mean, at one point, if you remember, Trump had this panel of doctors come out, and they were talking about some of the treatment options, and they were making all these statements that this was not as serious. And the lead doctor was a Nigerian doctor, and she had some really crazy, if you ever researched her, some just bizarre beliefs. And it was amazing that they put her as the spokesperson for the group. But they were around for like 3 weeks, and everybody was like, oh, and then they were gone. You never heard from them again. Because what they were pushing was some of these antiviral medications that Trump was pushing, and then once we knew for sure that these antivirals weren't actually going to work.
Right. Are you hydrochloroquine?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because that was like the big push in the beginning. They were like, "That's the solution. This thing's going to solve it.
Sure.
It's going to fix everything." We gave that to every patient in the beginning. It didn't help. It didn't do anything. So it was not the.
Well, I think part of it too is he didn't want people to because if you think, or if a society as itself thinks that it's all that extinction's on the rise, like people are gonna go fucking bonkers.
So he's in a tough spot because he doesn't want to incite panic.
Yep.
And I've heard too people think that Dr. Fauci and some of the other doctors is a big conspiracy because they were predicting this in 2017, and Dr. Fauci is on.
I've seen things that he published before the break.
Yeah, I think a lot of people predict this because one of the first things that Trump did when he got in office is they cut federal funding that managed pandemics.
Right.
Yeah.
And people are like, if you take that money away, like what you don't realize is, we've had H1N1, we've had a lot of these, the original SARS, all these were contained and extinguished quickly because we had the right money plugged into the right resources.
Right.
And then you take all those resources away, and all the experts are like, dude, if something like that comes, we're going to get smashed now because you basically have taken away all protective measures. So it wasn't that there was this big conspiracy.
Right.
He burst people's bubbles with that. People just were smart enough to say, if you don't have the resources to combat this thing, preventive measures,
Right.
we're going to get run over. And that's what happened.
Yeah. Mason wants to know, Mike, what do you think of the hospital workers in Texas quitting because they were asked to get vaccinated or step down, so they left?
I think, for me, I think all hospitals at this point should make vaccinations mandatory. We are on the front lines. We are the most exposed. I think that it's hard for me to hear a healthcare worker be anti-vax.
Yeah,
It's
right.
like if you don't believe in science, what are you doing? Why are you here? But I also would say that not all hospitals got hit with COVID.
Right.
Like my hospital is one of 3 in the city of Tucson. So if a COVID patient showed up in the ER at a different hospital, they sent them to us.
So your hospital was the COVID
We
hospital.
were a COVID center. So I think a lot of these hospitals where you have a lot of these employees are like, we don't want to be vaccinated. They probably weren't devastated with COVID like some of us were.
Right.
And so they're living in this state of denial. Like, why should we be vaccinated? Like COVID's going to be with us for a long time now. I mean, it's just going to be with us.
Well, it's going to be similar to a flu. Yeah,
I think so. I mean, I think it's going to be a constant mutation. And I think the virus is just it's a smart virus, so it doesn't kill very quickly. And so it can take on new forms. And so we're going to have to probably have boosters. I mean, I think that's where we're headed. We haven't quite got herd immunity at this point. But I think if you make mandatory vaccinations for all healthcare workers, it definitely put us over to 70% in the
Right.
country. And that's a major hub for infection transmission, right, is in the hospitals and in the doctor's office.
Yeah, the sleep rooms where all the nurses are fucking. Right.
Yeah, so if you have somebody at the entrance of those doors there and you just have to get the vaccine as you use the
Yeah, a
room.
little
That's
shot
right.
as you go in.
I mean, I don't think it's, I think it's okay to make it mandatory.
Well, this was one of my favorites. There were, I'm going to say, 7 Yankee players that got vaccinated and then got corona. So, in regard to, I had a coworker who's like, see,
Can I
your
ask you a
vaccination
question?
doesn't work. What's up?
Why do you always call it Corona? Why not just call it COVID-19?
What's the difference?
But there's I think we know now.
We know which one I'm talking about.
Well, there's numerous strains, right?
Yeah.
So only a couple strains are considered COVID-19.
Well, we know that I'm talking about COVID-19.
Well, but here's the thing: did the baseball players catch COVID-19 or they caught coronavirus?
COVID-19.
COVID-19
Well, according to what I've got.
This coronavirus is the common cold.
could be the common cold, correct? There's like 3 strains of it.
But my coworker then went on a tangent about how the vaccine doesn't work and blah blah blah. So reportedly,
Did the Yankees players become critically ill? Have to go to ICU
I
and
do
be
not believe that
intubated?
they did, no.
Did any of them die?
not that I know.
Sounds like the vaccine worked perfectly.
Reportedly, 2,000 vaccinated people have contracted COVID-19 since being fully vaccinated. 2,000 of millions and millions of people, leaving anti-vaxxers to believe in their often outlandish conspiracy theories, which we will discuss some of these conspiracy theories. Ultimately, we will discuss should we get vaccinated. Before we do that, I was looking up because I did the rare teams instead of the vocab game. I, prior to that, looked up rare illnesses because I was going to pick 2 illnesses and then make one up. But I found this gem. And I've got to know, have you ever seen a case of porphyria? Which, if I'm saying that right, this causes, not fucking kidding, purple urine and feces make porphyria infamous, as does the fact that the mad 18th century English King George III may have suffered from it. It leads to complications in the production of heme, a protein vital to... Heme. What is it?
Heme.
Heme? Okay. Like hemoglobin?
Your blood, yeah.
Gotcha. A protein vital to red blood cells. And it affects the skin and nervous systems. Attacks lead to abdominal pain, stomach cramps, nausea, vomiting, and constipation. And of course, purple poop and pee. Have you ever seen the purple monster in your hospital?
No, unfortunately, I've not had a chance to see that.
If that happens, is it? I get that there are certain rules with
Can you send us pictures?
yeah, people's personal information. If I don't know whose poop it is, could you send me the purple poop, Michael?
Yeah, you're only violating HIPAA if you attach like patient information with
Oh,
the patient
perfect.
name. Yeah,
I would
so-
like actually if the person's open, like if they're really interested in whether urine's purple, if I could actually have a picture of the person's urine stream as well. I want to know what shade of purple it is.
I mean, I'm pretty sure any patient would be wanting to show people that. So I think if it did happen, I think they would be more than willing to share that with you.
Well, the day Grimace comes through your doors, I want to know about it. Do you remember who Grimace was?
It's familiar, but
Big purple guy from McDonald's.
oh yes.
Erica says it sounds like a house episode.
All right, Michael, we've got some myths. Or not, you tell us. Number 1, COVID-19 is no worse than the flu, meaning no more people would get it and it's no more dangerous.
No worse than the flu.
No worse than the flu. That's what we hear.
That's certainly a myth. What the flu takes all season to kill, COVID was doing monthly.
Okay. Number 2, COVID-19 vaccine can affect a woman's fertility.
I'm not an expert in that one. I have not heard that it could. I have not.
Well, that seems like an ineffective. That seems inaccurate. If he hasn't even heard the myth, that's probably not true.
Yeah.
But this is what I did research just in case, because I'm blindsiding you with questions. What I got was the truth is COVID-19 vaccine will not affect fertility. The truth is that COVID-19 vaccine actually encourages the body to create copies of the spike protein found in the coronavirus's surface. This teaches the body's immune system to fight the virus that has that specific spike protein on it. So, if anything, what I was reading was it would actually be better to be vaccinated before getting pregnant.
I do believe that for sure, because once you're pregnant, if you contract COVID, I mean, it could be devastating to the fetus and to
Noted.
the mom, and you're almost gonna definitely lose. If the mom ends up in ICU, you're almost definitely gonna lose the baby.
Good. Okay.
Not the answer you wanted. I don't
No,
think.
that's just, okay. Myth number 3. You don't need to wear a mask. Masks are just a way for the government to control us and create no benefit to non-vaccinated people.
Yeah, I love this one. We've been wearing masks in the surgery and procedural areas for centuries
Yeah.
because they prevent the spread of germs.
Okay, so you're saying that the thing that we have literally done since the beginning of time is going to continue working this year?
Yeah, and when people say cloth masks, they're not as effective as a surgical mask, and I agree with that, but they are still effective.
Right.
I would rather stand
It still
behind
shortens
you
the range of what's
wearing
going on.
underwear and you had the Hershey squirts than you not wearing underwear and had the Hershey squirts.
That's
I like it.
a
So-
delicate way of putting it. I like it. Erica?
This is true because this happened to my mom. However, the vaccine can mess up your mammogram for some reason. If you have a mammogram done too closely to getting vaccinated,
Interesting.
I'm not sure why.
Oh, it's probably one of those magnetic microchips that they're putting in people.
Yeah.
Maybe
We had a video. Did we have that video here, or did I see that elsewhere?
I think we watched it here.
Where the woman stuck a fork to her neck.
No,
There was I
she
mean,
what? Put a fork in her neck?
it's bizarre.
Just stuck it to her neck, and it stuck like have you ever stuck a penny to your skin and it just sticks for whatever reason?
She thought it was magnetic.
She was
chip.
convinced that she was microchipped with a magnet after her vaccine.
While they're holding an iPhone.
Yeah,
Yeah, the Big Brother has got you.
yeah, they got you down.
Yeah.
All right, Michael. Myth number 4.
All right, well,
Oh, sorry.
so I will say this: we're in a learning period with this vaccine. So there are things that the vaccine may do that's going to mess with our diagnostic testing. We're going to learn about those and then say
Yeah.
don't get that mammogram for 6 months after the vaccine.
Well,
These
that's
are-
what they told her. They told her 4 weeks. after
Yeah.
that.
So these are things we're in a period of learning. We have to learn how this is going to affect us, and then we're just adapt to it. So
All right. if I've already had COVID-19, I don't need a vaccine.
Myth.
Okay. What I got was people that have gotten sick with COVID-19 may still benefit from getting vaccinated due to the severe health risks associated with COVID-19 and the fact that reinfection with COVID-19 is possible. People may be advised to get COVID-19 vaccine after they've been sick with COVID-19.
Mhm.
There's not enough information currently available to say if or for how long people are protected from getting COVID-19 after they've had it or created natural immunity. So, still get vaccinated?
I would, yeah. I mean,
Okay.
there's no saying that's, and I hear a lot of people. I've heard people say, "Well, I've already had it once and I did just fine with it." And it's like, well, I hope you get the exact same strain next time because
Right.
if you get a different strain, you may not do so well next time. So the vaccine is going to protect you against a number of the strains. Whereas if you caught COVID-19, you may only have antibodies for a particular strain.
Right.
So the vaccine is going to give you a larger protective measure.
Okay. Spikes in cases are because of increased testing. As coronavirus cases began surging in many parts of the U.S., Trump frequently claimed that spikes were merely a result of more people being tested. He tweeted repeatedly, without testing, we would be showing almost no cases. He said that in interviews as well. The reason they appear to have gone up is because of the increased testing. Why did cases go up if it wasn't the testing of cases?
The cases were always with us. We just were learning more about them as we were testing. So
So
he
the
was right. If
testing-
you don't test the cases, we don't know about the cases. But
Exactly.
doesn't mean that they're not there.
Okay.
No, but because everybody was saying, "Oh, there's a spike." Well, the reason it spiked as much as it did,
Because there was a spike in tests being done.
yeah, because we were
Yeah.
doing 10 million tests a day or whatever, however many they were doing.
Yeah.
Okay, two more. This one might be my favorite one. Not the myth, but the fact behind it. Myth. Researchers rushed the development of COVID-19 vaccine, so its effectiveness and safety can't be trusted.
Yes. A lot of people don't realize that these vaccines, they didn't begin the research and production during this pandemic. This is actually a continuation of the research and vaccine productions that were done in 2008 when the original SARS came out. So we actually had years of research and a lot of production already in the works. They were defunded because those viruses were eradicated at that time or went away. So they stopped all the research and they stopped
Yeah.
funding these things. The vaccine that we have now are a continuation of that.
Right.
They're arguably some of the most researched and well-funded and produced vaccines that we
Well,
have.
that is the opposite of the myth.
Yeah.
Uh,
So, yeah, I mean, a lot of people don't realize that we just used a lot of old research
Yeah.
And
and just continued it.
Yeah, there were 8 points that just every one of them was crazy to me. Pfizer and BioNTech and Moderna were created with a method that has been in development for years, so the companies could start the vaccine development process early in the pandemic. So it was already there. That's how they got started.
And
so
as
quickly.
another conspiracy, I want to myth bust real quick. No aborted fetuses were used in the research or production
Oh, I have seen that. Yeah.
of Pfizer or Moderna vaccines. They're mRNA vaccines. So there are with the J&J, there were some fetal cells used in the research of that vaccine.
Yeah.
And when I say fetal cells, there were cells from an aborted fetus, one from the 60s, one from the 70s. One is a fetal
Bastards.
cell from a liver, and one is a retinal cell, so from the eye. And those cells have been in a lab, and they've used those as research tools as human DNA. And so there are some vaccines that use information from those research studies
Sure.
on those cells.
But they're not squirting dead babies into your arm.
They're not using fetal cells for the production of these vaccines.
Okay.
And so I've heard this big time in the churches. You know, they're using aborted fetuses, and that's just absolutely ludicrous. So,
All right. The second dispelling fact about that myth, the myth that you can't trust the vaccine. China isolated and shared genetic information about COVID-19 promptly so that scientists could start working on a vaccine. The third one, vaccine developers didn't skip any testing steps. they did conduct some of the steps on an overlapping schedule, which is very rare. But that was so that they could gather data faster, and that makes sense. Hey, what can we do to speed up the production of this? Let's do these two steps at the same time. That seems logical to me. Vaccine projects had plenty of resources as the governments all invested in research and paid for vaccines in advance. Oh, that makes sense. We'll give you a bunch of money for whatever you come up with. Some types of COVID-19 vaccines were created using messenger or RNA, which allows a faster approach than the traditional way that vaccines are made. What is that? Do you know what that means?
I don't know about the speed, but the mRNA vaccines essentially are going in and they're training your antibodies to identify and reject
Okay.
these antigens. So with some of the other vaccines, like the flu vaccine, you've heard sometimes they're live or they're dead vaccines. So they're actually using the flu virus. If it's
Right.
a live vaccine, you're actually getting,
The
they're
low
actually
level of it.
a low level. And if it's dead, you're still getting some of that vaccine in there, and that's the body uses natural. The mRNA, they're actually not using any of the actual virus, but they've trained this vaccine to go in and train your body to recognize. And so it's a different mode. I'm not sure on the speed of one or the other, though. But it's a very different technology for sure.
Okay. Part F. Social media helped companies find and engage study volunteers, and many were willing to help. So that's how they got so many people involved. G. Because the vaccine worked for the study volunteers who were vaccinated, that's how we knew that it would be so contagious and widespread if we didn't use the vaccine. H. Companies began making vaccines early in the process, even before the FDA authorized it, so that supplies would be ready when they were authorized. And you hear that, they're not even approved by the FDA. Well, that's fine. They're working on getting approved by the FDA. They're not shooting them into people's arms yet. And as soon as they were approved, we started vaccinating.
Not everything we use in the hospital is FDA approved.
That also, I'm sure, is 100% true.
Sometimes it takes years to get FDA approval, and we're using stuff for years before. I mean, one of the piece of equipment we use in the cath lab that we've saved many lives with isn't FDA approved. Still gets used. So, I mean,
okay, so here it is.
Shouldn't bother people.
Your last question. Any vaccine will be unsafe and a bigger risk than getting COVID-19, which leads to the ultimate question. Michael, should Americans get the vaccine?
Yes. You have not had a poor reaction to any previous vaccines. You don't have any underlying respiratory concerns. And I think if you're 13 or older, you should get the vaccine.
So what do you think about them coming out with that? The kids are having a problem with their heart tissue or something like that.
So it's a good question. Here's the thing. First off, is the inflammation of the heart muscle, myocarditis, is it related to the vaccine? Is it related to an underlying problem the kid had that was undiagnosed at this time and the vaccine exacerbated it? Maybe now they discovered a health issue that they can now treat before it becomes a life-threatening problem later down the line.
Because it's a very small number.
It's small. When your odds are greater getting struck by lightning or win the lottery, then you're pretty safe, right? And that's really what's happening. Like the complications we're seeing from this vaccine are so small. You're better chance of getting struck by lightning or win the lottery. How many people are buying lottery tickets every day because they think maybe they can get that chance? When we think of healthcare, and this is what I do with my family, you look at risk versus benefit, right? Now, if you say, do I want to get my toddlers vaccinated? At this point, my answer is no. Why? We haven't really seen toddlers being affected by COVID in droves to the point where the risk outweighs the benefit. But we have seen with young adults, obviously with older adults, in droves, where almost 600,000 people have died from this. So, and we now seen the new variants that are now targeting adolescents, and they're getting pretty sick. So for me, if I had a teenage at home, I'd have to look at it risk versus benefit. and make my decision based upon that. But I was certainly really way more on the side of getting my teenager vaccinated because we know that COVID-19 is a killer,
Right.
and that's the scary thing.
And so I think what was herd immunity? 60 or 70%?
It's
Just
like
getting
80%, right?
now vaccinations.
70 at one point.
Yeah, I think when this all started, and I don't know, maybe Finland was like, no, fuck it, we're just gonna let this happen. And I think it was once they had 70% herd immunity, then it was like, okay, we'll be good. So there are people who are like, don't don't get the vaccine because only 60 or 70% of us need to contract this illness, which will kill tons of people. Those are the same people who are like, don't get the vaccine because it only works 95% of the time. Like, wait, what the fuck? Like if 60 or 70% is an acceptable number to get sick, then why is 5% not an acceptable number to be successful?
Yeah, and getting the vaccine does not mean you won't contract COVID.
No, you have
When it
a
says
small chance of getting it.
95%, you can still catch it. What it's going to prevent 95% of the time is you having a severe illness from it.
Okay,
So you can still contract. That's why the Yankee players tested positive for it.
sure.
But what it's going to do is keep your symptoms at bay, it's very minimum. That's what the vaccine is supposed to do. That's why when they say even though you're vaccinated, you can still spread it because you can still contract it. You can
Right.
still give it. Just going to make sure that you don't wind up in the ICU, intubated, or dead. And that's the purpose of the vaccine.
Nice.
I wasn't gonna get it, and then when they came out and said that kids can get it, I didn't want to be the asshole that didn't have my kid get it, so I went with my
Don't
son
let
got
Tom.
it.
Don't let Tom like it. Tom is the asshole. Erica made Tom and
She didn't make me.
She
told
brought
me
him
it
in,
was
she
my
held his
decision.
ear and she walked him into the.
No, she told me it was my decision. I wasn't gonna get vaccinated. The way that I looked at it was, I had been out in the public, never had gotten it. I've been out every single day, and then they came out and said that 12 years and older should get it.
Mm.
I was like, fuck it. And I'm not gonna be a hypocrite and make my son get it if I'm not gonna get it.
Yeah.
You know, that's not a good way to look at it. So
Yeah.
I went with them. We're both last weekend was our weekend. We're fully vaccinated.
Oh,
2 weeks
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. 2 weeks after our last shot. So
Congratulations.
no
I think,
side effects. I had a sore arm for a couple days.
Yep, that's how it was too. Hurt,
Yeah.
hurt bad. 24 hours, a very sore arm.
Your first shot or your second shot?
Both.
My first shot, I felt like I had the worst flu of my life.
You also
It
had
sucked.
Moderna.
Yeah.
I had Pfizer. So and little
What you
sore
had?
arm.
I had
And
Moderna.
the second one, nothing. I didn't even have a sore arm.
Some people had that flu-like symptoms for 24 hours. Other people,
Yeah, I heard a couple people, mainly who got Moderna, that they had like severe
yeah.
side effects. But whatever. One day of feeling like shit is better than being dead. So.
Yep, I agree.
But Pat, anything else you want to add?
No.
So I guess we'll take this time. So the episodes over the next couple of weeks are going to be spotty at best. Pat's not doing the show on Wednesday. I'll be doing it with Erica and a special guest. And then Sunday, I have no idea if Pat's going to do a show. I will not be around. Wednesday, we're going to try and do a show live from Aruba with Pat and Mason. And then the following Sunday, I will not be around again. So no idea if Pat's going to put a show out.
I may drop the first episode of the other show in its place just to get people to see it.
Well, you have to put it out as a podcast.
Like a video, you mean?
No, podcast. The one that you listen to on your phone.
Oh, that's fine. That's what I would do.
Do you know how to do that?
Yeah.
So you guys won't have that either.
Just click buttons.
Yep, just hit button.
I've seen you do it.
But yeah, if we don't, hopefully we can do this trip from Aruba, the stream from Aruba. That'll be fun. You guys won't see me though. You guys will see Pat in his basement in his boxers probably.
If you're lucky.
If you're lucky.
Yeah, if you're lucky.
Kinda like
Other than
Ronald
that,
McDonald eating a French fry down there.
Michael, I want to thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me again.
I really find you interesting. Like, because it's something that I don't deal with every day. So,
Yeah.
like, I'm really pulled into what you're talking about. It's different for me. Nobody in my life really works in healthcare. So, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's what has made it the hardest is, again, it's like it's like I feel like I have kind of like identify with soldiers coming back from war,
Yeah.
and it's like we weren't there, we didn't see it, so it's like hard to understand what they're going through, and that's kind of how it has been in the hospitals. Like
Mm.
you're at home all day.
Well, like guaranteed, right? 3, 4 years from now, there are going to be a shit ton of movies about a pandemic. It's going to be based off of COVID,
Mm-hmm.
and again, they'll be embellished, I'm sure, to some extent. But maybe that's the best way to get some of the stories out there. What, like you were saying, with the lady who wants to see her husband, and she wants to come. She has an open wound on her leg. Like that shit really happened. It's crazy.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah.
but it's also you understand where they're going. You want them to be with their family, but it's not the best thing for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so many dynamics involved. And everybody is the good guy and everybody's the bad guy, and
Yeah.
it's just really hard. So,
Well, and good luck.
whoever does make that movie, kind of like that movie Crash, where they show all the different perspectives. That would be kind of cool that they're able to
Yeah.
capture that many perspectives and to show how dynamic it really was.
Yeah. And good luck to you with whatever you decide to do with your professional career.
Thank you. Apparently, my wife has an opinion. Patrick will have to tell me about it after.
What? I don't know.
I will
don't
say
know.
this, man. You only get one shot to spend time with your family.
Yeah, I spent some time on the lake and getting sunburnt, and the one thing I never thought about what I afterwards, like I realized I just was thinking about how much fun I was having spending with my kids versus I wasn't really missing the cath lab. Now, to be fair,
To be fair,
when I turned in my notice of request to transfer, I didn't go to my director and say, "Hey, I want X, Y, and Z, or else I'm leaving." I just said, "Hey, there's a job opportunity. I'm going." Um, he got the COO and everybody involved, and they approached me and said, "What can we do to retain you?" And I gave this very lengthy list of this is what I need. I need this place offloaded from me immediately. I need more staff in these areas, and I need X, Y, and Z. And so they put together a retention proposal that has gone all the way up to the CEO. And I have a day in mind. If I don't hear back, then I'm just going to go ahead and apply for their job. But if they do meet some of the requests that I made, it would take a lot off my plate.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
so that is a big determining factor on whether or not I jump ship or not. If they meet these needs,
Either way, you're in the same hospital, correct?
I'd be in the same hospital, yeah. I'd stay within the
Motherfuckers are in a
organization.
weird spot.
Well, and that's why I don't have a whole lot of leverage. It's not like because they know me well enough in the hospital. If I do this other role, I'm going to do well there too.
Right.
Yeah,
So the
you're
hospital
right.
wins regardless of where I
Yeah.
go. We've always been a top performer where we go, regardless of the conditions. I'm not
Yeah.
one of those people that are going to start doing sabotage or doing poorly because I'm unhappy.
Right.
Still going to do this.
No, yeah,
the
to
job
go
I
to
do,
work.
yeah.
You do it 100%.
So if they really want to retain me in this role, then they're going to make some of the things that requested better. If not, then I have opportunities. I have options.
Nice. I like it.
Yeah.
I like 3 days a week for you. That fits good.
I would love to work 3 days a week.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
It wouldn't
They
be.
have
I would
janitor
still have
jobs
to
that
do.
are 3 days a week.
I would still have to pick up bonus shifts. It wouldn't be like work 3 12s and be done. I would have to probably pick up a shift or two a pay period. So probably would be doing 4 12s. Still better.
Still better.
Well, and hopefully you
4
get
12s
those.
is a lot different than 5 10s even.
Well, I do 4 10s and then a lot of call. That's the
Yeah.
problem.
So, but hopefully you work 4 days straight, you get 3 days off.
Oh, fuck
or
that.
6 days off, right? Because if you do 4,
Yeah.
it takes 6 to work 4 on the backside.
Yeah.
And then, but like right now, the way they bonus nurses, you can just do you get a $500 bonus just for picking up a shift. So you get the $500.
What's a shift?
A shift, 12-hour shift.
It's got to be a 12.
Well, that's if I pick
Like you can't get a $500 bonus for picking up a 4-hour shift.
No,
Oh.
no, because essentially
Nice.
you're
You
gonna
shut your-
like if you got an ICU, you're getting a team of ICU patients. If you leave in 4 hours, who takes your patients?
Yeah. All right.
So you would get that bonus for picking up the shift, and then your shift would be time and a half. So that's how you make the money. So I'd still work the bonus
Because
shift.
you could make more on your extra time than many people could make
In a week.
working 40 hours a week.
Mm-hmm.
I like it.
I like it too. I'm about to go to nursing.
How hard was nursing school?
Nurse school's tough. Yeah.
I'm not a big fan.
It's like a
I would
40
never be able to do it because death really bothers me,
It really
And-
bothers him.
and I would not be able to be around it.
Yeah.
Like
Also,
I don't even like going to
bugs,
wakes or
scary
funerals.
movies, the dark.
Those three things, the bugs a little bit, the other two not so much. But no, I wouldn't be able to do it. No way. I'll just keep yelling at people at work.
There you go.
Well, when put in extraordinary situations, you wind up doing extraordinary things. So you don't give up on the hope too soon.
I like that thing. That's what we should name the show. Good thing you're texting. All right, Pat, you got anything you want to end the show with?
I say, good day.
All right, YouTube, we're out.